look, he's the talk of the league. He's the talk of the basketball world. And Kevin Durant was asked about Wembanyama after their game earlier tonight. And we heard Victor say that KD's one of his favorite players. And it seems like KD is a fan as well. And he said the league's really in trouble when he comes in. That type of talent and skill, it just puts a smile on your face if you play basketball, because the evolution of the game has taken on this far. We've got a 7'5" dude being able to do everything on the court. So he's inspiring to a lot of people out here. And I mean, KD was inspiring himself for all he could do at his size. But what is your takeaway from just everything that we've seen from Wembanyama this week?
Well, I appreciate his maturity. We got a chance to watch the interview he did when he sat down with our game crew. And shout out to Jeff Van Gundy. I appreciate the love of my brother. And Mark Jackson. But that age, that maturity off the floor, Cassidy, you can tell clearly translate to a player that wears a size 20.5 shoe. And with a long name like that, everybody's want to try to come up with a nickname for him, right? And one of my favorite Hall of Fame players is Kevin Garnett. And his nickname was the Big Ticket. Until somebody come up with a nickname for him, I'm going to just call him Blank Check.
Oh, come on.
Because that's what he represents to me. He already sitting front row, deservedly so, wearing his Buffaloes. We talking about him. Adam Silver's talking about him. LeBron called him an alien. KD's talking about how he's going to change the league. Teams are tanking for him right now. And so let me just also point this out. The teams that are tanking, and Woj was just talking to me about this, 14% chance to get number one. But you got a 27% chance to get 1 or 2. So, of course, Victor deserves to be the headline. But the story might be Scoot Henderson, who's going to go number 2.
Blank check. That's not bad. That's not bad, because we were having a discussion earlier in the room. Who would you give up for that number 1 spot? There's not a lot of people that you wouldn't give up to try to get that number 1 spot.
Probably give up anybody except Giannis and the Joker.
Just those two?
NBA Countdown, and what you're about to see is highlights of a game between Metropolitan 92 and G League Ignite. And get used to seeing Met 92, because Jalen Rose, that's Victor Wembanyama's team.
He's so very dynamic, Greeny, and you see the 2 top prospects in next year's draft bump knees. Unfortunately, Scoot had to leave the game, but I hear he's going to be all right.
And then take a look at Wembanyama. I mean, Jalen, just describe what we're seeing in this kid who's 7'4", maybe even bigger than that.
7'5" with shoes, Woj told me. 8-foot wingspan. It's a tall man's game. Watch out!
He's tall, but he plays with little man skills. He had 36 points, 11 rebounds in this game. In the 2 games in this sort of
got Rudy Gobert looking
here,
like a point guard.
He averaged 36.5. Here is Woj. And Woj, for the fans who have not yet started hearing his name, and get used to hearing it because they're going to hear it a lot, how would you describe who he is, what he is, and the impact he could have on the upcoming season?
Greeny, Victor Wembanyama is the singular greatest prospect in NBA draft history. He's that at 18 years old. He was also that at 17 and at 16. He's not coming out of nowhere. And the impact he's going to have on the NBA this season is dramatic. As one GM told me the other day, we are going to see a race to the bottom like we've never seen before in the NBA. Teams trying to put themselves in position to be able to draft Wembanyama or get the 2nd pick and get Scoot Henderson, who in any other year would be a number 1 overall pick. But one team president said to me, drafting Wembanyama might add as much as $500 million to the value of your franchise. At 7'4", 7'5" in shoes, he is so advanced skill-wise. There's just never been anyone like him. And the level of tanking we may see in the NBA this year, as many teams who may try to get in position, I think it's going to impact the trade deadline. You may see more players available earlier in the season as teams just don't want to be in a position to be winning. And so that has an impact for contenders. Because of the play-in tournament you saw in recent years, teams who were fighting for 10th, 11th, instead of dumping their assets to contenders, they tried to get in the play-in. They may go in the other direction this season. So how does that impact the elite of the league, teams willing to take on more payroll in a year where I think there's a number of championship contenders? Victor Wembanyama is going to really impact the league before he ever plays a minute in it.
That's fascinating. He's an 18-year-old young man from France, and the ripple effects, as he describes, could be remarkable. Now, who do we expect to be down there at the bottom when the season comes to an end? According to Caesars Sportsbook, the Pacers and the Spurs have the lowest over-under wins totals entering the season, but they're not alone at the bottom. The Rockets, the Jazz, the Thunder, all under 25 wins. And again, we will see where everyone decides to place themselves as this goes. And Michael Wilbon, you and I were talking about this before we came on the air. There's someone he reminds you of, although he may even be better as a prospect.
Well, he is better as a prospect, but at that time, we're talking 40 years ago, and I'm talking Ralph Sampson, who did things. He was the greatest prospect up to that point. Yeah. And at 7'3" or whatever, 7'4", Ralph did things that no one had ever seen a big man do. He wasn't in the mold of Wilt or Russ. He was a completely different player. So now you move 40 years ahead. And by the way, he reminds me of Ralph, just sort of the way he looks. And I will say, to go through 37 and 36 points in back-to-back games, to rebound, to shoot the three like he does, to move the way he does. No. We've never seen anything like this from someone this young and at this size.
What are the expressions you're giving us there, Mr. Stephen A.?
Well, listen, I didn't think about Ralph Sampson because Ralph Sampson was a tall dude that, for the most part, played big. I mean, he didn't, he had skill. Please don't get me wrong. Not throwing any shade on Ralph Sampson, but ultimately he was on the interior. When I think about this kid right here, he seems to me to be a poor man's taller version of the great Kevin Durant. He's got ball handling skills. He's got a J. He's got a perimeter game. He can get to the hole. He has those skills, but he's rail thin. And then that makes me think of Greg Oden. It makes me think of Sam Bowie. It makes me think of Chet Holmgren, the number 2 overall pick in this past June draft that ain't even playing this year because he's out injured. We've seen big dudes that were relatively skinny. Not that was Greg Oden or Bill Walton or somebody like that, but you look at a guy like Chet Holmgren and how rail thin he was, there is some trepidation. Of course, you got to take this dude number 1 at 7'4" with those skills. Can't go away from them, but it worries me. But I am a huge fan of Scooter Henderson.
I'm a major fan as well, Stephen A. And the one thing we didn't mention, absolutely, how he shoots the threes. These ain't just swing, catch and shoot wide open. He getting them off pick and rolls. He doing it in transition. He doing it off the dribble. He falling out of bounds on the baseline, knocking down threes. You see why teams racing to the bottom to try to get this guy.
Now, look, I mean, Woj just said it. He is considered to be the greatest prospect the NBA has ever had. That includes LeBron. It includes Alcindor. It includes anybody you want. Maybe someday Bam Adebayo will have to try and deal with him. He and the Miami Heat are getting set to go in Brooklyn. We've got NBA preseason action coming up in just a moment here on ESPN Week. The one, the only Stephen A. Smith is ready to go. Stephen A., another season of NBA Countdown. How do we feel?
Yes.
My brothers, it's good to see y'all, man. I can't wait. What's going on?
That's mutual. What's up, my brother?
Well, we're going to have the Nets tonight, and that's an interesting place to begin. Let's talk about the Brooklyn